Welcome to another edition of Commerce Mafia. Today we're going to be talking to Greg Wilson, gentleman out of Florida. Let this beat rock for a minute first though. You can get this beat, by the way, over at SoundClick.
Rolling.
The beat is called Coprophilia. It's by Rolling Tartana Beats. Somebody go pick that up. Let me hear what you do with it. So yeah, we talking to Greg Wilson today. Started back on the internet in 2006. He already had a background in business. But this dude's got over 40 sites. And he gets between 800,000 and 1 million visitors to his sites per day. Making $250,000 a year, at least. Those are just from his sites. Doesn't include the joint venture sites that he's got going. So we're gonna pick the call up in progress. Y'all go ahead, check it out. Greg Wilson. Greg, let me ask you, man. How long have you been in internet marketing?
Since about 2006. I had owned a business back then, sold the business, and my choice was to retire. I was 49 at the time, or 48, something like that. Retire and play a lot of golf or find something else to do. And I just was not into the hustling end of what it takes to get a business going again. Starting a new business or even buying somebody's business that was struggling and turn that around. So I just kind of kicked around and got involved in the IM industry instead.
Where did you go to first when you wanted to learn about internet marketing? Was it a specific website, a forum, or what?
It's crazy. I went to YouTube videos. I mean, here's the deal. I knew people were making money online. I just had no clue how they were doing it. But I knew there was money there. And so what I did was I went to YouTube, and I probably spent 300 hours looking at the most inane videos money could produce of people saying how they make this kind of money, make that kind of money, and yet they're recording from a room with kitchen cabinets that were made. They didn't match.
It didn't pass the smell test.
Not even close. It wasn't even close. So. I found probably 2 out of 150 or 200 that were any value, and I took some ideas from a couple of those and put a little thing together for myself.
Okay, what was your first foray online? The first thing that you did start yourself? I
built the ugliest website you have ever seen in your life. I have zero artistic skills, and I used every bit of them. And I put together an employment website. And I had one of the things that I read or saw, I guess both actually, was that content mattered, and I can write a little bit. And so what I did was I wrote. I didn't have to work. I didn't need the money. I didn't have to work, so there's no issue as far as money coming in. Our homes were paid for. We have a few. And, I had a couple dollars in the bank, so I didn't really have to work. So it was kind of like a good experiment. So I just wrote, and I would write just like I worked back in when I had a brick and mortar business. I'd write 12, 14 hours a day. And so I just wrote a huge website about employment. Mm-hmm. And the first month we made from AdSense around $750, something like that.
The first month?
The first month, yeah.
Where did your traffic come from?
It was all organic. I didn't know any better. It was just organic traffic. It was just, traffic from the internet, just traffic from Google and Google actually back then. I would just write. And I didn't know how to do keyword research, man. I didn't know anything. Honestly, I didn't know anything. I didn't know about keyword research. I didn't know about keyword density. I didn't know about title tags. I didn't know about meta tags. I didn't know about SEO. I really didn't know about SEO.
You just knew how to write, so you did.
I knew that if you were looking for a job, or if you were looking for a particular kind of employment, the kinds of questions you would ask. Because I've been an employer most of my adult life. So I knew the kind of questions you would ask. And I knew the kind of questions an employer would ask. So I wrote about those sorts of things. And it just so happens those are the sorts of things that people search for in Google. Just commonsensical things.
You know what, Greg? I think that's one thing that most people are missing when they're trying to get into internet marketing. You read about all these methods and techniques, and people try to follow it to a T.
Yeah.
Instead of putting their own personal experience into it. Like you said, you knew what kind of questions would be asked. You know what I'm saying? So you used your personal experience to take something that you knew would work, but you added your own little touch on it. And another thing, people always say content is king, and you write good content, and a lot of people don't believe that. But I guess from an SEO standpoint, it's not so much that content is king, but once them people do get to your site, you know, you've got to have that content, right?
Absolutely. It's really a combination. Content is king for the search engines, because the search engine needs to see that there's something of value on the site. And then once the visitor gets there, you want to retain them for a certain period of time, because realistically what's going on there is you have a prospect walking into your store, and you're a salesperson trying to sell them a product on your website. So your prospect is on your website. The longer they're in your presence, the more chance you have of selling them something. And that could be a click on an AdSense ad. It could be a CPA product. It could be something from Commission Junction or something hard like that, something physical or tangible. But the longer they're there, the better chance you have of selling them. The more pages they go to your website, the much better chance you have of selling them. So you want to have something of value to keep them there.
Yeah, you know what? I did things kind of backwards on some of my sites. I was so focused on ranking the sites that actually providing good content, that was secondary. You know, and I'm seeing the results now. You know, Google does take that bounce rate into
yeah, he does.
Yeah, because I have pages on my some of my sites that rank fine, and then there's one that no matter what I throw at it, it just won't. It used to rank. It ranked for a long time, and I didn't know why it wasn't ranking anymore. I just looked yesterday, and the bounce rate is like 90% on it.
Ooh, that's bad.
So, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's something I'm gonna have to change.
Yeah.
That first month with that site, you said you made $700. Do you still have that site?
No, I don't have that site anymore. That site ended up turning into a cash cow of around between 30 and 35,000 a year, steady as all get out. Where it was coming in, and I didn't have to do anything. I hadn't touched that site since 2008 or 2009, maybe 2008 or 9. It was probably 9. And I did nothing, and the money was just coming in. I didn't do anything to it, and it's still coming in because the guy I gave it to still has that money coming in. I didn't sell it. I gave it to somebody, and that person has that revenue now. But
how many pages are on that site?
Not very many. Around 400. It's a small site.
Well, no, that's not really a small site, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, it is in the real world. It is. If you're going to build, see, I fashion my internet businesses, and I have several, after my brick and mortar businesses, and those are this is that I build for the long term, and a 20 or a 50 page site it's a cute little site. It's a nice little hobby site if that's what a guy wants, and there's nothing wrong with that. Really. But if you want long-term earnings and you want long-term passive income earnings, you need to build real sites. Most of my sites are 2,000 pages plus, and they make real money. And the reason they make real money is because there's so much content on there, and there's so much, and every bit of the content is unique. I used to have a full-time writer on staff. I no longer have a full-time writer on staff because I'm not really building anything these days in terms of websites. But for a long-term site that generates good revenue. Now, you're not going to retire on 35 grand a year. I know that, and it's not huge money. I know that, but it's not bad.
Depending on where you live,
right?
You
Well,
know, 30,
you live in Vegas, right? Is that what I saw?
yeah.
Okay.
We're out in Vegas.
Yeah, I don't know that you could live on 35 in Vegas. I guess you could in my area here in Florida.
Hell, I'm living on less than that right now. So yeah, 35 would sound real good.
There you go. Okay, it can be done then. Yeah, we all have our different thought processes. You know, I could live on 35. I just would not want to.
Right. Let me ask you this: why did you give the site away?
I'm also a big believer in giving to society and giving to my keeping my little corner of the world a good little corner of the world. I believe in and I don't believe in karma so much as as we understand karma to be in the generic sense, but I believe it's the right thing to do to help others that are in your little corner of the world, and that's just what I did.
Well, good man there. I wish I would have known you back when you was giving that thing away.
Your last name would have had to have been Wilson.
Oh, family. Okay,
yeah.
I get it. Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with that, because if your people struggling, then eventually they come back around on you anyway.
You always take care of your people, right?
I read one of your posts where you was talking about switching up the method of monetizing a site, and how you might have had AdSense on the site and it was working well for you, but you experimented with different ways to monetize the site, and your revenue increased. Can you talk a little bit about that, man? How do you know when to switch up? I mean, because the sites were making money, right?
Right. Yeah. That's an old post, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I do experiment periodically, and I'll take sites, and I have a little luxury. Honestly, I have a little luxury because we do okay. But I will take sites, and I'll take a site that's making a decent dollar, and I'll play with it and see what if there's a better method of monetization. We all know, well, let's say that's an absolute. Most people in the internet industry know that the AdSense is easy money. Right. People are going to click on the ad. You're going to make a couple dollars. And low hanging fruit, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm all about actually making money off of low hanging fruit. I've been doing it for years, but sometimes it's worth it's a little bit of a gamble. And I don't really know when to. I just said, well, on that particular site, I gave it a run. I said, let's see how this works. I've done it with other sites as well. That one you're talking about, it I mentioned publicly. I've done it with other sites as well. Some have not worked out, and others have. And the ones that haven't worked out, I switch back. And I'll use Commission Junction. I'll use Amazon. I use AdSense. I use CPA methods. We use ClickBank a little bit. I try all the different methods to see what works best. And the thing about our industry is that we're in such a dynamic industry. Things change so often. You have to try things. Or I think it's irresponsible as a business person for me not to try things to see if maybe there's something else that could do a little bit better. And that's really why I do that sort of thing.
Yeah, you know what? I think that a lot of us don't really look at ourselves as business people. Internet marketer is a title, and it is building a business, man. I guess depending on the way you approach it, but that's probably the best thing to do is look at it as you are a business person and you are building a business. And when you start to look at it that way, you're gonna do things a little bit different.
I honestly think that's the only way to look at it. I do. I think it's the only way to look at it. I don't see any sense in having. I mean, if you want to have it for a hobby, that's one thing. But for those of us that make our living off of it, to say, well, gee, I'll fool around a bit here and I'll go play golf or whatever people do, on a Tuesday afternoon. I think it's irresponsible as a human being. And I think you're doing yourself a disservice, and I think you're doing the industry a disservice by not putting in a solid work week. And guys do it all the time. It's sad because they're just leaving so much money on the table, man. There's just so much money out there for this.
Well, you came from a business background, though. You had brick and mortar stores. What kind of business was that?
Well, I've had upholstery businesses. I've had a bottled water business, a 5-gallon bottled water business. I've had a janitorial cleaning service. I was in the real estate industry. You know, I've messed around in a few different industries over the past. I'm 56, so over the past, since I was 21, I've been self-employed, with very few exceptions. I spent about a 4-year stint working for a fella down in South Florida, who owned a bunch of bottled water companies. But for the most part, it's been, you know, my own stuff.
How many sites do you have up right now?
Well, personal websites that I generate revenue from of my own, just under 40. That are my own personal sites that I generate revenue from myself. You know, I have a bunch of other sites that I have in networks that I use for a variety of things. Some for SEO purposes, some for clients, and a bunch of them just for testing different things to see what works.
Okay, so out of those 40 that you have, how many of those are actually making you a decent amount of money?
Well, I do me a favor and define decent.
Anything, actually.
Every one.
I mean, every one of them.
Every one.
Okay, how much time do you have to put into each one of these sites, or the time that you do have to put into each one of these sites? Is it worth the money that you get from that site, or are some of the sites underperforming? I would assume that you would have, you know, some of the sites that are just stars.
Well, I do have some stars. The majority of them are they make between $1,200 and $1,800 a month. I do have some real good ones though. The revenue from those sites is significant, in most people's eyes anyway. I have some that make real money, you know, but you know, $1,200 to $1,800 a month on average for the you know, probably for half of them, maybe 25 of them.
The sites that you do have that are making money, is the traffic all organic, or are you doing any media buys or anything?
It's all organic. I'm kind of anti-media buy for most guys that own websites. I've not seen it work well, and I've tried it, and I haven't tried it with a couple of dollars. I've tried it with over $50,000, and for your average Joe website owner that has, you know, 5 websites and maybe they're a couple, 300-400 pages big, and you know, and maybe they're making a couple thousand each off of them. I don't know that that's really a smart move. I think that for a guy who's selling a product, maybe, or if you have a high-end monetization method, there might be something there, or maybe if you're just branding, and that makes sense as well. But I think for your average Joe website owner, I don't see media buys unless there's something I don't know about it. And I know there's something I don't know about it. There's a lot I don't know about it, but I don't see the money I spent as a waste. I see the money as spent as education, and saying to and that education was, Greg, you're wasting your money.
Move on to something else.
Yeah, don't do that. You're doing fine with the organic traffic. Stay with your program.
Is there a niche that you got into back in the day that you're still into right now that just consistently performs? Or the money that you're making now, are they new things? As you said, the business we're in is dynamic, you know, and things come and go. Is there something that's been...
I actually never deviated from my process. I've always been business, finance, and employment. And
you've always been what?
Business, finance, and employment.
Okay.
That's been my niche. I have one site that's a medical site that I built, and somebody else wrote all the content. I had a writer at the time. I paid a guy. He wrote all the content. But I don't know that industry, so I can't really contribute to that industry. So everything I do is all stuff that I know a little bit about. And so I stay with business, finance, and employment.
So when you hired your medical writer, was he a medical student or something, or did he just look at existing articles online and rewrite them? How did you find someone that could write on that subject?
Well, he actually wrote for me for a lot of other stuff that I was doing. And when I approached him, I said, "Look, he's a university graduate here in the States. Actually, he's got a master's degree in business." And I said to him that I'm looking to build a particular site about this particular industry. Is that something you'd be interested in writing about? And he said, "No problem." And his stuff is excellent. He's an excellent writer. He did a lot of research. I mean, you pay him. You pay him. I don't mind paying the guy a fair price. And he did an excellent job. But I did that because of a condition that I have, and I thought, well, gee, I'll build a site about it. In hindsight, I look at that and I think that was an emotional decision and not a well thought out one. The site does make money, and it certainly is, the return on investment is certainly fair, but I cannot grow that site because I don't have that kind of knowledge, nor do I have that kind of interest. I thought I did at the time, but I know better now. I know to stick with my niche is what I know.
Right. But sometimes you don't know what you know. You know that you do know certain things, but until you step outside, your comfort zone, then a lot of times you're just not going to know, man.
Yeah, you're probably right. That's a good point. That's a good point. I know now.
Yeah, right. So a guy's just starting a site, man. He's fresh into internet marketing. He's just starting a site. What's the first step? Is it keyword research? Is it just to get the site up? Is it looking at how you're going to monetize the site? Because I believe there's different processes, man. If you find a good product, you might build a whole site around it. What's the first step for you?
Passion. You got to find something that you can be passionate about, that you're going to stick with, that you're going to be able to grow with. You got to have something that you have a real interest in, because otherwise you've got something that's going to be what I call an orphan site. It's going to be something that's going to die on you because you're not going to stick with it. The other thing is if you don't have passion for it, you're not going to be able to have conversational content. And I'm a big fan of conversational content on a website, because that's really how I build my sites, initially. And from there, then it's keyword research and seeing, well, what's the competition like in that realm, and is this something that's realistic? And then can you come up with 25 to 40 keywords inside of 3 or 4 minutes for that particular niche? If you can't, that's not a good one for you, in my opinion. You got to come up with 25 to 40 keywords real fast, kind of rattle them off the top of your head almost, before, and then take it to, and take a look and see. I have a tool that we built, myself and my partner. One of my partners. I have several partners. And this particular guy, he lives in Eastern Europe, and he built the tool based on our criteria for keyword research. So, we'll punch in those 40 keywords, and we'll come out with 3,000 or 4,000 different keywords, and that's a good start to build a website. Is those 3,000 or 4,000, and we'll start the content basis on that based on those 3,000 or 4,000 keywords. For offsite SEO and monetization, I don't look at any of that for at least 6 or 7 months. I like a bunch of content on the site. I want the site to do everything on its own initially, because that's what's natural. It's not natural to stick ads on your site right away. It's not natural to have links for your website right away. That's not natural in Google's eyes. It's not natural in my eyes. It's not natural in Google's eyes either. So if it's not natural, it's not something that is gonna stand the test of time over the years, and I'm like I say, I'm big on when I build something, it's a long-term project.
Right. Speaking of natural, has Google ever kicked you in the ass? Have they ever slapped any of your sites?
I woke up one morning and they were all slapped. Back in I don't know, was it 2008 or 2009? There was a thing that guys were doing, something called a link wheel, and it was a process designed by a young man named Linus, who was from Sweden and probably still is, who goes online by the name of Lemonarian, and he came up with this process called a link wheel, an SEO process called a link wheel, and most of the people I knew in the industry were using that same process to rank their sites, and I was as well. And I woke up one morning and every one of my sites was gone. Not de-indexed, but just not showing up in the search engines anywhere near the first page, where before they were just cranking out the revenue. There was no revenue or very little. And I played around and I figured out it was my offsite SEO, what I call my back end SEO. Mm-hmm. And so I I had built a bunch of link wheels, and I built them all manually because I didn't know anything about technology at the time or automation at the time. So I went and I eliminated. I took all those backlinks away from off my site. I had set them up myself personally. I kept spreadsheets, so I went to everyone. I took them all off, so I had no backlinks showing to my sites. Mm-hmm. And that's how I came up with that link pushing process. And I started using the link pushing process instead, and they all went back to where they were supposed to be.
So the link wheel, is that where all of your tier 1 or tier 2 properties connect with each other?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. The link pushing, what is that all about, man?
Well, you use the term tier 1 and tier 2, right?
Right.
And we see that all the time, right?
Right.
Well, that process is the guy that originated that process is me. I'm the one. Is
that right?
Yeah, I'm the one that came up with that process back in 2009 or whatever it was, and I called it link pushing. And you'll find if you were to go to some of the popular internet marketing websites, forums, you'll see advertisements. But that process is something that I started, and that took the place of the link wheel.
So that's where it came from. You had success with the link wheel. You saw that stopped working, so you came up with the new thing.
Right, exactly. And I actually wrote an ebook about it and gave the ebook away for free to 13,000 people or something. But that's where that whole process came from back then.
Okay, link pushing. So explain to me and the people what link pushing is. Is that just tier 1, tier 2, tier 3?
It's setting up various kinds of websites that link to your site, and then pushing those websites, those backlinks with other backlinks using a variety of tiers, as well as a variety of platforms. When I first came up with it, I did that manually as well, and like I said, wrote an ebook. The reason I wrote the ebook was so that my wife could do it. So I was going to teach my wife how to do this, so I didn't have to do it all. And she didn't quite get it, and so I just started giving the book away anyway. It wasn't a very big book. It was, I don't know, a dozen pages or something. And one of the people I bumped into in the process was a fella in Ireland who we started talking SEO back and forth, and he told me he's going to automate this process. And what I want the software. And I said, well, sure. And I said, in fact, let's start a little service. So we started a service back in July 2010 offering that, and which has been going since then. But that's where that process actually came from way back then.
If you're building a site now, let's talk about tier 1, the links that touch your money site directly. What are you finding that works today? Is it still Web 2.0s or what would you build around your money site on that first tier?
I think that the guys that are building Web 2.0s, only Web 2.0s to their sites are going to get hit at some point because they're setting themselves up for a footprint. It's a generic footprint, but it's a footprint nonetheless. I think that you have to have a variety of different in fact, not I think, I know what you have to have because I do it. You have to have a variety of different kinds of backlink properties that are going to your site as your first tier. If you have only Web 2.0s, and as does everybody else that you see, most everybody else that you see talking about how to rank their site using the tiered method, that is nothing but setting yourself up for a big slap, because at some point Google's going to say, you know what, all these guys, look at this, they all have just Web 2.0 properties going to their sites, and yet they're ranking. Why is that? And then Google's going to take it a step further and see what's connected to those Web 2.0 properties. And next thing you know, you guys are all going to be those guys are all going to be sitting where I was sitting that day in Clearwater, saying, dang nabbit, my sites all suck. That's what's going to happen.
All right, so if it's not just Web 2.0s, what else can you throw into the mix on that first tier?
Name a property, and that's the kind you could put in there. You could put in forum links. You could put in wiki links. You could put in social bookmarking. You could put in any kind of backlink that you could possibly think of is the kind of backlink you want going to your site. Now, you don't want to have your site flooded with 700,000 backlinks. Yeah, I know that. You know that. You don't want to start your site out like that. But there's just too many guys that are doing this with 10 or 20 or 30 Web 2.0 properties, and that's all they have going to their site. And I'm telling you, I know what's going to happen because it's historical. It's historical. It's happened in the past.
So from your experience, them 20 or 30 Web 2.0s going to your site will help to rank it, though. It's just going to get smacked.
Absolutely, it will help to rank it, and it's a great process to begin with if that's what you're going to do. But if that's all you do, then you're in it for the short term. You absolutely positively have to have what I call random chaos. You have to have random chaotic kinds of backlinks going to your site. You have to have them hitting your site at random chaotic times and being indexed at random chaotic times. Everything that has got to look as if it was not planned. And the more it shows up that it could have been planned, the worse it's going to be long term for people with their sites.
Are there any particular type of links that you don't mess with on your tier 1?
Well, I don't put any. I don't put anything that's anything adult. I don't put any site that would have porn or pills associated with it, any of those negative things, gambling, those kinds of things. But no, there's no site that I wouldn't. There's no other kind of backlink like generic backlink I would not have point to my site. I would have every. I do have every kind pointing to my site, and I promise you that I make more with my 40 sites than most other guys do with their 40 sites. And the reason that is not just because of what's on site, but because the off site is that varied and that unique and that random and that chaotic.
So what are you using to push all these links to your site? Is it your own services?
I use my own services. I have about 16 people that work for me on a part-time basis all over the world. And I use a lot of their manual labor as well. And I still do stuff myself. I mean, I'll still write myself. I might, I don't write a lot. I might put out like 5,000 words a day. I don't write like I used to.
That's not a lot. That's hey, that's a whole site right there, man.
Well, for a lot of guys it is, but it's, compared to my old days, I would put 14, 15 hours a day in writing. I remember one day going to a restaurant, and I think I wrote in 2.5 hours 17 articles in 2.5 hours, and because I was like, and what I did was that somebody would walk in there, I'd write about them, and I'd write about that person, and I'd fit them into whatever the particular topic I was targeting that day. So yeah, I can write a little bit. bit.
Do you think that that's a key to your success? Actually, I mean, because pretty much the internet is, until recently, text-based. Videos started coming along a few years ago, but you have to have that text, man, and that sounds like that helped you a whole bunch, man, because most people can't write. I mean, of course, you can write your name and write a little story, but even me, man, I have a background in writing, but when it comes to writing for these sites, man, I think it does come back to what you said, though. The passion. If you pick something, if you pick something you're interested in, you can write about it.
Yeah, and I know I'm real fortunate that way. I know, it's and the same with anybody is nobody is, for the most part, generated that kind of ability themselves, or whatever kind of ability you have. I mean, Hank Aaron didn't hit all those home runs because just all practice. I mean, God gave him gifts. So I know that some of my abilities there are, a large part of why I have those abilities, it's God given. But on the other side of the coin, I don't mind working at it. And if a guy, and that's the success is from the working at it. I treat my industry, my online business as a business. I mean, we own link pushing with a partner in Ireland. I own L-Index with a partner in Egypt. I have Rank Your Site with a partner in Macedonia. And we all work hard at what we do. And we all own personal sites, and those sites all do well because I work hard, my partners work hard. And that's the only reason you make a living at anything is if you're willing to work hard. I mean, you get lucky and hit the lottery, but in business. But typically, if you're going to do well, it's because you work.
It does seem like you have a lot of different JVs, joint ventures going on, and I want to talk about that. But first, for a guy who's not as prolific as you when it comes to writing, can you give us some writing tips? on how to, I mean, if it's not your passion, if it's something that you see that there's opportunity there, there's money there, and you want to get into it, do you have any tips on how to actually sit down and write?
Yeah, absolutely. I taught a real life class like this for a while, actually a couple of years to guys who I had taught GED class to a bunch of guys in some disadvantaged situations for them, and part of it was teaching them how to write. And it's real simple. The first paragraph you write is going to be you're going to outline what you're about to write about, and you're going to put in there 4 or 5 different particular aspects of what you're going to write about. The second paragraph, you would write about the first aspect of that. The third paragraph, you write about the second aspect, and you continue to go on down until you have each aspect you mentioned in the first paragraph mentioned in a paragraph form. And there's 400 or 500 words right there. And then your final paragraph, all you're going to do there is rewrite your first paragraph from the last paragraph point of view as the end of the article. You'll have 500 or 600 words there all told. It won't take 20 minutes, and it'll be a complete article, concise article that covers a particular point and covers 4 or 5 aspects of that particular point. And it's really easy to do once you set it up. And but the first thing for a guy to do is to write down, okay, I want to talk about computer mice, and then you write down 5 things about computer mice. Well, you want to talk about there's 2 buttons on the side, there's a roller on the top, there's a click button on the left, there's a click button on the right. Well, there's 4 topics right there. And then let's say there's colors. They come in green and red and black and white and yellow and purple, just like people. Okay, so you got 5 different aspects there. So your first article is, well, this article is going to cover the different aspects of mice that people use for computers and why they would use a mouse and the benefits of using a mouse for a computer. Boom.
So what you're saying is first paragraph is kind of an outline of what you're going to tell them.
Exactly.
And you list the things that you're going to tell them. The following 3-4 paragraphs are each particular point, and you're getting detailed with each point. And then the last paragraph is a summary basically of what you just told.
That's all there is to it. You just did it. You just taught the class.
Well, shit, it's easier said than done sometimes. You know what they say, those who can't do, teach.
Yeah, well, that's what they told me. It was a rough crowd, I'm telling you.
All right, let me ask you this, Greg. Yesterday, how much traffic did you get yesterday, all of your sites?
Between 800 and 1,000, 800,000 and 1 million visitors.
Jesus. Okay, let's talk about money. How much did you make yesterday?
Well, I'll give you a broad idea what I make annually for my websites, and it's between 250 and 300,000. So whatever they brought in, it was a percentage of that.
Right. So that's just your sites, your 40 sites, or all of the sites?
That's my personal sites. Yeah, my personal sites.
Okay.
That doesn't include the services that we own. That's just the personal sites.
The joint ventures that you have going on with these different people all around the world, how do you meet these people, first of all?
Just online. Just online, and just all email and some Skype conversations.
Are these, for the most part, people that are already successful? Have you ever done a joint venture with someone that might have just had a real great idea, but they aren't known online, or they don't have any real big successes? Or do you gotta kind of be already in the circle?
I look for guys that are successful and have technical skills, because I don't have very many. I have very little in terms of technical skills to bring to the table. I'm just a businessman. I'm not much more than that. I'm hardly even that. I'm just a businessman. So I look for guys that have technical skills. I typically have some interesting ideas that usually work. But my deal is if I'm gonna hook up with somebody, it's guy's got good business skill, good technical skills. And the other thing I look for is the guy a family man. Before I look at much else, I look to see what his personal family life is like. My partner Ireland has got 3 kids, a wife, lives outside of Dublin. We've met face to face a couple of times. We've had dinners, his family and mine. The fella in Egypt, I've never met face to face, but I know he's a family guy, and we've had lots of conversations.
Why is that important to you, Greg? Have you had some experience with guys that maybe didn't fit a mold that went bad, or what?
I want a guy with the same values as I have. It's a value thing. I want a guy with the same values as I have. You know, if a guy thinks family isn't important, I mean, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just not right for me. Mm-hmm. You know, if a guy says, family's not that important, or, if that's not important to you, it's okay. I'm just not interested in doing business with you, like on a partnership level. I mean, I'll still sell you my products, but I'm not, we're not going to be joined at the hip.
So let me ask you about Cert Buddy, man. Is that a partnership you have with someone else, or is that just yours?
That's a partnership between myself, my Irish partner, Kevin, and my Macedonia partner, Darko.
Okay, so what made you start that? Did you see a hole in what the other rank trackers were doing, or what?
It was for sale. A fella in Canada had it for sale, and at the time I was looking to expand my reach, and I got with a broker, an internet service broker, a website broker named Thomas Smale, who lives in London. And Tom had this particular site. I looked at a bunch, and this particular one sort of stuck out as something that would tie into what I was doing. So we bought it from the fella, and have made, obviously we've worked to grow it. But I bought that. It was strictly it was a business decision. It was, wasn't my idea. And there might be better ones out there. In fact, I know there are better ones out there. There's also worse ones out there, and I think we all have a spot, but it worked for me. It worked out okay.
Okay, your content sites, man. Well, what I call content, where you write a lot of, you do a lot of writing, and the people come there. You also have sites where you offer services, right? Like Cert Buddy. What are some of those sites that you have that are making you money now, where you offer services to other people?
Well, linkpushing.net, which is the first service I've owned, and that's my partnership with Kevin in Ireland. L Indexed, it's owned by myself and the fella in Egypt. And
what is that? Just a letter L? Just L?
Yeah, the letter L Indexed. Yeah, just L. Yeah, it's Lindexed.
Oh, okay. I'm tripping, man. I've heard of that.
Yeah, Lindex. Yeah, and that's a URL indexing service. I own a service called massmediapr.net, and that is also in partnership with my friend in Macedonia. And we provide an online public relations service. I own a company called rankyoursite.net, which is a partnership with my friend in Macedonia, where it's more of a boutique, hands-on, personalized SEO service.
So let me ask you the difference. What is the difference between linkpushing.net and Rank Your Site? Is Rank Your Site a little bit more customized, or what?
Yeah, linkpushing.net is a automated service. You enter your website, the keywords you want to rank for, and you push a button, and the service does everything else. But you've got to decide what your keywords are going to be. You've got to know if you've got to be doing other SEO as well. You can't just rely on link pushing. You've got to rely on other services or other methods of backlinking. I've always said that from the get-go. And I say that about any automated service. Anyone you see out there, I'm going to say the same thing, is that you need to have not just that service. You need to have a mixture of services, because you can't have just one type of service rank your site. That's how people end up getting, losing their ranking on their sites, because Google sees that. So that's entirely automated. With Rank Your Site, you bring us your site and what you think you want to rank for, and we'll take a look at the site. We'll do your on-site SEO. We'll take a look at what your backlinking process is right now. We'll quote the client, a price for ranking your site, and at the same time we'll say, look, you want to rank for the keywords, red mouse. Well, we want to rank you for red mouse, but we'd also like to rank you for these other 11 or 15 or 22 keywords or 28 keywords, because that will also make you money and also generate traffic to your site. And so,
So when you do that, I mean, are we talking about huge sites? Can a guy come to you with a 10-page site
oh yeah, sure he can.
for rankyoursite.net?
Absolutely. Yeah, a guy can come with a small site or a guy can come with a big site. We accept about 70%, maybe 68% of the sites that come to us, because some are beyond the scope of what we offer for what we charge. For instance, if you want to rank for make money online, that would cost too much money and too much in terms of effort on our part for what we charge. So that's not the kind of thing we'll take on. We'll say, look, you can rank for that, but that's not what we do, because our resources are not set up in such a way that we handle the site that requires that kind of effort. So I can't help that guy. But 70% of the people that come to us, we can certainly help. And aside from your typical porn, pills, gambling, that sort of thing, we don't mess with that. But the other sort of thing, absolutely, sure, 10-page site, no problem. I've got 30 of them in the system right now.
I'm curious about Lindex, man, because that's the first. Well, first of all, explain to the people what it does. It basically makes sure your links get indexed, right?
Right. It typically people use it for their backlinking. Some people use it for their own site, but typically it benefits the backlinks. Where if you create a backlink, just because it's out there doesn't mean that Google recognizes it or even knows it's there. You put that backlink into our service, and that can be done via an API. You don't even have to do it manually. It will take the backlink and get it crawled and indexed in the search engines.
Lindex was the first service like that I ever heard of that did that. What made you start that, and when did you start?
Actually, I didn't start that. I bought into that.
Okay.
Yeah. Ahmed, my partner there, he's a really, really smart guy. Really smart. I don't know how it came about, where if he offered it or I made an offer to buy it. But in either way, it was like, okay, well, we made a deal, and we made the deal like it was a 20-minute deal,
Oh, yeah.
and it was, it was a lot of money, but we made the deal was made in 20 minutes, and the next day, we wired the money over there.
But you knew him beforehand, though.
Oh yeah,
right?
I knew him for quite some time. Absolutely, I knew him for quite some time. We've talked a lot we've talked an awful lot for over several years before that even came up.
You know what? That brings me to something else, man. The Black Hat World Convention, because I truly believe that not necessarily to be successful, you have to know people. I mean, you can be successful by yourself, but to start jumping levels, making them quantum leaps from $100 a day to $1,000 a day to $10,000 a day or whatever. I do believe that it's knowing the right people, kicking around different ideas with different people, picking each other's brains, which brings me to the conference. I don't really know who's supposed to be there. Are you going to it?
No, I'm not going there. It's in Las Vegas. I was in Las Vegas once. That was plenty. Nothing personal, bud. But I'm never going to Las Vegas ever again.
You don't like Sin City, man?
I didn't like it one bit. It was much too. It did not fit my line of sight. Now, to be fair, I'm a little autistic, so if things are not normal, I have a little trouble with that. So
well, no, Las Vegas isn't normal.
No, it's not. It's not even close.
There's nothing normal.
But I made my decision not to go back to Las Vegas before I got to the hotel. Because I'm in the cab going from the airport to the hotel. We stayed at Caesars, because we had an internet marketing convention there, and we stayed at Caesars. And I'm in the cab, and we're at a traffic light, and driving right in front of us goes a box truck, a big 24-foot box truck, white box truck, and on the side was Blondes to Your Room, $69.95.
I already knew what you was going to say. They drive up and down the strip all day and night.
And now that's I'm not making any judgments. People do what they want to do. I got no issue with that, but I don't. I said to myself, I'm never coming back here. This is just too strange for me.
How long ago was this?
January of 2012, I think.
Oh yeah, well nothing's changed. They're still driving up and down the strip.
Yeah, that's people make their living. However they make their living, that's none of my business. But I'm not going back. I'm not going back to Vegas, and it's a shame because because when I was there, I hung around with some really nice people. There's a few guys from Black Hat World who were there that I know very well, who I'm very friendly with, who I know will be there this time around. And I'm not going to see them. It's too bad. But hey, you pick and choose.
Sin City's definitely not for everybody.
Oh yeah.
On the other hand, if you're into that stuff, then you're at home.
It's perfect. Oh yeah, there were some guys that it was you couldn't find a better place for them. And friends of mine, and that's cool. Enjoy it. That's good. But me, nah, it didn't fit me. And that's that's just a small part of it. I mean, it was just surrealistic. I mean, the whole thing was just strange. Caesar's was a strange place to stay. Get up in the morning and just to go for a walk to go find some place to have breakfast. You're walking past casinos and people playing cards and rolling dice at 7 a.m. Now that's fine for somebody else. It doesn't.
It's just overload for you, though.
It doesn't fit into my. You can't fix me there.
Yeah, I hear you. But let me ask you this: when you was out here, it was for an internet marketing conference. Getting back to what I was talking about, do you feel that attending these conferences is worth the money as far as how it's going to help you meet people or maybe take the leap to the next level?
Without a doubt. Every one I've gone to one there. I've gone to them in New York. I've gone to them in San Francisco, Austin, Texas. Everyone I've been to has had the value is well worth every bit of it, without a question, without a doubt. No question about it.
You're still going to conferences, just not in Las Vegas.
I'm just not going to Vegas. Yeah.
Okay, I hear you. Do you know anybody that is going to this conference that you would like to see if it was maybe in Dallas, Fort Worth, or something?
You've got 3 speakers there that are from Black Hat World. You got Tactical. Elon Nass is his name. You've got Brian Vance, and I forget what his Black Hat World name is. And you've got Meathead 1234. His name is Thomas Smale. Thomas, I've played golf with, who's a friend of mine who I'd love to see again. Elon, I've spent a lot of time with Elon up in New York City. He's from New York. And Brian Vance, I actually hung out with Brian in Vegas. And I'd love to see all 3 of those guys once again. And I'm sure I will, just not there. But
right.
The value they're going to bring to the table, just from them alone, I know is worth going. Now, there's some other speakers that are going to be in there that I don't know. Matthew Woodward is going to be speaking. I know he's supposed to be pretty hot. I've read a little bit of his blog, and he's a common sense guy. I think he thinks he's got his head screwed on straight. Jeff Shoemoney is going to be there, and Shoemoney is a big money guy. Now, where his thought process is, I don't have any idea. I just know he knows how to make money online. I don't know that he makes money online the same way I do. I mean, I'm sure it's clean. It's just not. Mm-hmm. It's just not the way I operate. I think he's more of a short-term guy. And I could be 100% wrong. I don't know. But there's a few guys like that'll be there. Damien, who owns Black Hat World, I'm sure is going to be there. And I know some of what else Damien is into in terms of business, and I'd like to meet him for that very reason. When he bought Black Hat World, it was something I was looking at buying. So I know around what the value was at the time, and around what the revenue was at the time. And I like what he's done in terms of generating revenue and building that up. But I also know some of his other stuff that he's doing. He's a sharp guy. I wouldn't mind catching up with him. At some of these places, I've picked up clients. I've picked up huge clients at some of these places. Some of these meetings, public companies that you would recognize, who spend a fair amount of money with us on our services. I've met at these conferences, but it's the value. I think the conference is like $900, right?
You know what? I thought it was even more than that. I looked at the price tag a while ago, and I can't remember what it was. I know it was out of my range.
It might be a couple thousand. To me, if it's under $5,000, it's worth it. To me, it is. It's worth it. If it's under $5,000, it's worth it because of what you get in terms of value. No doubt about it. That being said, when I go to these conferences, I bring a lot more than $5,000 because I know I'm going to spend some cash.
Well, yeah. Definitely. You don't want to just stay at the conference the whole time.
Yeah, and
But I,
I'm taking clients out, and I'm making sure that and usually what we do is my wife and I, like I say, we believe in giving back. Is we'll sponsor somebody. We'll pay for somebody to go. In Vegas, we paid for a guy from Florida to go. In San Francisco, we did the same. In New York, I did the same.
was their last name Wilson?
No, the last name was not Wilson.
Okay.
No, the last name was not Wilson. No, but it wasn't that kind of value either. I mean, somebody to go to a conference is a few $1,000s.
Yeah.
But no, we believe in. I believe in, and in Vegas, it was a competitor. It was a guy who was a direct competitor of me at the time.
So why'd you do that?
Because he's a young guy getting into business.
Mm-hmm. And you saw something in him and just figured that it's not going to hurt you.
Well, I don't know that I saw something in him, but he saw something in himself, and it in the business world, and people don't always appreciate this, but you want your competitors doing well. You want your industry doing well. You want guys who I'll give you an example. Back in the day, when I owned my bottled water company here in this area, I had some big competitors. I had some big names competing against me. Nestle's was one. They had a huge footprint in bottled water at the time. I don't know if they still do or not. I don't pay attention to that industry, but they were a competitor. Perrier at the time owned some similar type companies as mine. They were competing against me. There's a company called Suntory, which is a beer company in Japan, but they're in a lot of other things. It was a huge bottled water company at the time. And they were all competitors of mine. And I'd have people say, well, why are you better than, XYZ company? I'd say, I'm not. XYZ company is a good company. I said, it's run by good people. They put out a good product. They're honest, they're fair, and they give you good service. I said, I'm not any better than them. The difference between them and me is this, is if you call over there and you speak to the owner, you're not going to get him. If you call my company, speak to the owner, I might show up at your door in 20 minutes. I said, that's the difference. I said, but they're good guys, and they provide a good product that the FDA has to certify, just like they certify mine. And the health department's in our buildings all the time, my building, his building. I said, we deal with the same thing. I said, it's good stuff. You're not going to go wrong by buying their product. And
when you don't have good competition, a lot of times you can get lazy, you get complacent, man. And your whole business can wither away if you don't have good competition. That's what I've found anyway. Is that often I would rise only to the level a few levels above what my competition was.
Right.
And if the competition is weak, then a lot of times I just didn't have it in myself to keep pushing.
It's funny. That's how it is when I play golf. Is I don't like to play golf with guys that play like me. I want to play golf with guys that are better. Because I always try to rise to that occasion. You kind of buckle down. You tighten up. That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Well, not too much better. Didn't Meathead take all your money?
He sure did. He sure did.
You want to play with a lot of guys, but maybe not Meathead, huh?
But let me tell you something. I hung in with a man. He's a much better golfer than me. He at the time he was about a 6 handicap, and I was, I don't know, 16 or 17 or 14. I forget what I was at the time. But I got strokes relative to the difference in the handicap. I hung into about the 16th hole, which was pretty good for that. And I know that I elevated my game. On the other side of the coin, when I did pay him, I signed that $50 bill. So either he could have that as a trophy and not ever spend it, and it'd be of no value to him, which is really what I wanted, or he could spend it and he no longer has the signature. But my thinking was, I'll sign it, and he's obligated to hang on to it, and that way, he can't spend it. And it was only so much of a victory,
So even though he won, you won in the end.
Yeah, well,
he's probably still sitting on his wall somewhere.
I hope so. If I ever go to London, I'm going to go down there and check it out. I hope so.
Is there anything that you want to touch on before we get off this interview? Anything specifically you want the people to know? You want to put out there for the people?
I tell you what, if you can take anything from me as far as being successful in this industry, is that, and I'm being totally honest with you, I'm not very smart. I'm not at all very gifted, but I do work hard, and anybody who's willing to work hard can make a living at this. I'm just a generic businessman, but I make a significant living at something that a lot of people struggle with, and it's mainly because I work very hard, and I also focus. I pick at something, I work at it, and then this is what I'm going to do. But I think anybody, if I can make a living in this industry, anybody can make a living in this industry, because I'm really just not that bright. I just like to work.
So if you feel that you're not that gifted, you've got to have a gift somewhere. Of course, part of it is writing. What is it then? Is it being able to recognize talent in other people and get on board with them, or is it the talent of just being able to focus and get a job done? What is it? What is it?
I'll outwork you. I'll outwork you any day of the week and twice on Sunday. Okay. What time did you get up for work this morning?
I got up this morning probably about 7 a.m., but I didn't start working until I called you.
Okay. What time are you going to work till today?
Probably till about 1 a.m. But, I'm going to watch a couple Netflix movies in there.
Okay.
During that time frame.
I got up at 5 o'clock. At 10 after 5, I was answering emails. Now, I don't drive because I don't like to drive, so I get driven. While I was being driven, I handled a phone call and some more emails. When I got to my office, I sat in my office and I worked. My wife came over here. I had lunch from 12:30 to 1, maybe 1:15. She left. I went back to work. At 1:59, you said, "Hey, you ready for the call?" And I worked. And I'll leave my office today around maybe 5:15. I'll get driven home because, like I say, I don't drive. While I'm being driven, I'll work, and I'll work in the car. I'll have dinner tonight, and after dinner, I'll probably go back in the office and spend maybe an hour and a half. I'm 56 years old. I don't need a nickel of what I earn. I could stop working tomorrow and do very well and not ever have to work again. We don't have to work in my family. We're very fortunate that way now. But I don't know anybody half my age that could put up with that schedule and be okay with it and do it 5 days a week. That's why I'm successful.
You know what? I've found that a lot of older dudes, man, they've conditioned themselves through their whole life to be able to outwork younger dudes. I'm not talking even physical manual labor a lot of times, man. Have you ever had to force yourself? Did you ever hit a patch where you just didn't want to do it, but you had to force yourself?
Oftentimes. I used to run long distance when I was younger, and I was never very fast. But it turned out at my senior year in high school, I was the fastest guy in school because I could outrun anybody long distance wise. I qualified for the Boston Marathon when I was 14 years old, back when you had to qualify. I could run a marathon under 3 hours when I was 14 years old. That's real hard work, but if you just do it, you do it. The bottled water business, I remember going to work in the morning in the bottled water business. I was in my early 30s. I was leaving at 1 o'clock in the morning to go to work, coming home at 8 o'clock at night. But a lot of older guys are conditioned themselves like that. The older guys that condition themselves like that, they're the ones that don't have to work. You take a look. You take a look. They don't have to work.
Well, they've been doing it their whole life already, and they've built something up.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That's it. If somebody started working like I work, and if somebody with more brains than me started working like I work when they were 21 or 22 or whatever, 21, whatever it is, they'd be rich. I'm not rich. I'm okay. I'm not rich. But they'd be sitting in tall cotton.
A guy's just starting out. He doesn't have 20, 30 years, 40 years of conditioning behind him. And how does he start to build that when he doesn't really know what the hell to do? Are there exercises that you used to do? Not physical exercises, or exercises a guy can do to condition himself to become someone who just constantly, consistently works? Or is it just you have to do it?
You just have to do it and not be a baby. You just have to do it and not be a baby. That's all. You just have to decide you're not going to be a sissy boy and be a man. It's a man thing. Either be a man or don't.
Man up.
Either be a man or don't. It's the guy's call. Be a man or don't be a man. Me, it's a man. I'm a man. It's my choice to be a man.
And there you have it, Greg Wilson, the man. Okay, well, we got, if people want to get in touch with you, man, where do they do it? Or what services can they get from you? I know you got linkpushing.net. Is it lindex.net or .com?
It's a .com. That's a .com. lindex.com, surfbuddy.com, rankyoursite.net, massmediapr.net. They can email me at greg@rankyoursite.net, or that's probably the easiest one to remember, but they all come to the same place.
Okay, greg@rankyoursite.net.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, Greg, man, I tell you, it was a pleasure talking to you. I learned a whole bunch more about you and about internet marketing, really, than I thought that I would, man. It's always a pleasure talking to someone who's accomplished, who's been doing things a long time, and knows what they're talking about.
Super, enjoyed the talk, bud.
So there it is. Wanted to thank Greg for joining me again today. You really believe dude's getting 1 million people per day to his sites? I do. It's not impossible. It's completely possible. You just got to get up and get to working. And homeboy's been working for a minute now, 8 years straight. Commerce Mafia.